So Will and I were just talking here.
Having some laughs. Yep.
And do cars get bought at auction or do cars get sold at auction? As a friendly little debate, I think.
Well, it's a good one because it goes back a long way, right? And you could go to like the answer, which is cars get bought at auction. You're like, well, wait, no, cars get sold at auction. Well, Joe, you got an ADA or a Galvez book in your pocket or in your car, right?
Sure.
What's the number they print on that page? Is it the number the seller wanted for the car, or was it the number with the last guy standing with his hand in the air? Literally, what number goes into the guidebook?
Yeah, it's the last number, it's the last bid.
The car that's what the guy paid for the car. The car was bought at auction. Yeah. Right? You could list all of the reserve prices in the world.
Yep.
Right? And we know where that ends, right? Because I think my car is worth $10,000. The only guy who knows what the car is worth is that who is standing with his or her hand in the air last, right? Yep. So, and again, we can have fun with that. The cars get bought or sold, but more like, if you're let's think DealerClub, right? We're going to guide these members, our club members, as to how to prepare a car to sell on DealerClub. And if you keep in mind, if you subscribe to the theory that cars get bought at auction, right? And we've heard me say, and I'll just say it every time, and you can say, well, stop already. I've heard enough, right? But if the car is put on the money, and you can put these in any order, right? Accurately announced and accompanied with when the title's going to be in hand.
Yep.
That car's getting bought.
Yep. You de-risked that buying experience. You took all the variables out. You just said, here's a car. It's really for sale. Buyers gravitate toward that. I call it chum in the water.
Right.
You put that thing out there. These buyers, and I'm one of these guys, we are addicted to buying cars. We want to buy cars. The worst thing you can do with a guy like that, guy like myself, an audience like that, is to tease me, is to put some chum in front of me and then yank it away and say, oh, I wanted you to bid on my car, but I'm actually not serious about selling it. You torment me.
Yeah. So, and if you're going to rely on an engaged buyer, and maybe the best analogy is if you're standing on a physical block and you're selling cars, and you've got a car that's gonna get done. It's it's a F-150. It's that vehicle. It's going to get done. You feel good about it, right? And you're looking, and all of a sudden, because you've told the auctioneer it's a $25,000 truck, and you told the auctioneer, listen, I need $32,000 for this truck, and we know the rest of that story.
Yep.
All of a sudden, what begins happening to that physical crowd? It
disperses.
Right. So when we think about like preparing a car to sell on DealerClub, I always say put your buyer's shoes on.
Yeah.
Anybody who's really good at standing on a block, physically or digitally, understands that you've got, I don't know, I mean, you've got a limited time span. You're dealing with attention span. He has 40 other cars on his wish list that day. They're running at another platform. He's got to log out of this one, or he's got to go down to lane 6 to get to the other one, right? Yep. And so that if they're not engaged, no matter how much preparation you put into it, how much recon you did, and all the other ingredients you think that prepare the car to sell, if it doesn't meet the buyer's eye immediately, you probably have lost that engagement. So the mechanics of inspecting the car and getting it prepared and doing the CR in the dealership, and we'll get into that in later conversations about how to put together a CR. But more purposely, let's think about the psychology, because that's really what we're talking about. You used to use the phrase cage match.
Yep.
Right? You got to open a cage match up on every single one.
Gotta let these guys fight it out. They need that. There's so much magic in an auction, in a well-executed auction, and I think it's largely a lost art, right? A lot of sellers think that where they set the reserve, it dictates what that car gets sold for, and that's like the oldest. I don't know. It's to me, it's totally wrong. It really, if you wanted more for the car, do you think like asking more? I used to play this game with dealers. Like, well, then why don't you just ask $1 million for it? Do you think that's going to work for you? And the answer is obviously no. When you extrapolate it like that, the whole trick to maximizing on an auction, this shouldn't be a trick at all. It's you want the biggest audience on that vehicle. So how do you get the biggest engaged audience? You de-risk it and you let them taste victory on it.
And that becomes like it perpetuates itself, right? Because now there's validation. When that third buyer on the floor sees that two guys are locked in, he has his car in his sheet too. He doesn't think it's worth $30,000, but these two guys do. What am I missing?
Yep.
All right. Now you've got a car that's going to end up printed as a number in the guidebook. It's getting purchased at auction. So, and again, without getting into the mechanics, and we will get into the mechanics of how to prepare the condition report itself, because ours is a little different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to go out and do this yourself. A third-party inspector is not coming to just put like a two-dimensional write-up of the car. You're going to be able to add that color that you would in an open environment. But keep in mind that you've got to maintain the attention span of that buyer, and the very best way is to mark the car for sale, and if your reputation is that you're known and trusted as putting a car on the money, accurately described.
Yeah, and your reputation is going to live right there on the car that you're listing. Right. So everybody's going to know, are you for real about selling cars? Because there's patterns to this, Right. The same guy that's a 30% seller at an auction and schleps his cars at 3 or 4 different auctions before he finally cuts it loose, he always takes that approach. He always is asking too much. He's always trying to strong arm the buyer base, right? And then the opposite of that is the guy that brings it to one auction and he sells them all that week. The engagement on his car, and the reality is they do more. Yes, he leaned in, he embraces the auction power, the X factor of an auction, and he gets better results. It's a risk, but it's also a reward.
We had that conversation earlier this week with one of the alphas of the industry, and very much we know the success that anyone at that part of the food chain enjoys is that you're known as a trusted seller, and that if you have your hands in the air last, you own the car, and then it becomes a good use of your time is what we're after. Because and again, we talked about the calls that we've engaged with so far. And when you see the questions that we haven't quite answered yet, is like, how much time is this going to take, right? Because in an atmosphere, and again, without naming our competitors in play, physical or digital, right? If the emphasis from the offset is not put on, and this could be a rough term, and I've said it before, we've heard me say this, you have to be prepared when you're at auction to put a bullet through the car, right? It's like, it's time to go. You've got a captive crowd. It's got activity. Right? Maybe you thought it was worth 30 grand. The market just said it was worth 25. Are you going to get fired if you sell that car when you get back to the store? Right?
Yeah, auctions are not meant to be car shows, right? We're not trying to parade these things through the streets and show them off. This is where the show is the action. The show is the unit getting sold.
So when it comes time to present this to you and we pitch this to you, and we're not asking for every car. We'll take every car.
Sure.
But we've had this conversation now. It's like, are you prepared to put this car on the money and stand behind it? And if you are, we're going to deliver success. Right?
Yeah, and you're going to deliver success for yourself too. And I think that's really where this really comes together, is that for every additional car you sell, your reputation in the eyes of the buyer audience is getting better and better and better. You are seen as someone that they want to follow. You want to pursue their cars. You have proven to them that you're serious about selling the metal that you bring. You're not wasting their time, right? And further, and this is some of the secret sauce of DealerClub that's really not so secret, is the better you perform as a seller, the lower and lower your sell fees are, to the point where we actually pay you to sell the car.
Yeah, let's get into that some more, and it'll be further. That's where we said, get in touch with us. Let you under the tent and take a look at that, right?
Yeah.
Because the delta between what you're paying now, you're doing well where you are, right? And I think we talked about this before. That's where you've gone. You're familiar there. You're comfortable there. Don't be afraid to look at some of the alternatives that we're going to provide. And when you look at the swing between what you're paying now and what you can net out, and if you did that on a monthly basis or an annualized basis, talking about a significant amount of money, a huge difference that can, right? Then when you do kick that car down the road and it lost $5 grand, and you are going to get fired when you get back to the store, you can say, but wait, look at what we're doing here,
right,
compared to what we had been doing. So, but that investment's got to be made. And again, as you think about preparing to look at DealerClub and think of yourself as using the platform to sell your inventory, think about coming in well prepared and saying that, all right, I think I've got this car bundled up so that it's going to be a useful a time investment for the buyer. I've got the car properly described. I'm going to put it on the money, and we're going to let the market speak and let that car get bought at auction. So I don't know if we solved the debate on whether cars get bought or sold at auction, right? And it on goes. We'd love to. I have that conversation all the time. And there's some compelling arguments about the cars get sold or not. So
a lot of it just has to do with psychology and ego. The seller who's standing on the block wants to believe he's in control. I think that the best thing a seller can do is remove themselves almost from the equation, right? If they get out of the way, they lower that reserve down. I know this sounds like, I always used to get chastised for this. You're just trying to short sell my car. It's the furthest thing from it, sir or ma'am. What I'm trying to do is get 10 unique bidders fighting for your car, because I guarantee you that 10 people fighting for your car will yield out, net out more money for that car than if there's 1 or 2 pecking at it.
Yep. And, the conversation evolves back over to buying and selling, so that as we approach the club community, and we ask you to come in, having the opportunity to both buy and sell, I think is something I think that's going to be a difference. We don't know yet. It hasn't mattered itself out yet, because we ask, when I'm on these calls, and I'll ask guys, hey, would you primarily buy or sell at auctions? You'll hear both, right? But these guys usually are black or white. They buy or sell cars at auction. At the end of these demos that we're doing, you can see the guy's kind of rubbing his chin, looking out. And he goes, I think I'll be able to buy cars in Dealer Club too. I feel good about, if I need that car, and that rating is there, his reputation is there, the community has spoken. We're creating this town hall essentially, right, where your peers have spoken. It's not us hanging the number on the car. It's not us hanging the rating on the car.
Right.
Your peers have spoke and said, this is a good experience. If you buy from this guy, there's a good chance you're going to own the car. And when it gets delivered off the truck, you pretty much got what you bid on.
I think that's a real differentiator with the way Dealer Club is approaching this, though, which is that we're purposefully not trying to muscle the market. We're actually getting out of the way. We're providing you a platform that has all the information, all the dots connected, all the feedback loops, so you can safely proceed at this auction, know who you're dealing with, know who you're buying to, selling from, all of this, and it all makes sense and it all gels.
Yeah.
And the incentives are there too. So sellers are not incentivized to go and try a bunch of different marketplaces. They're incentivized to go deeper into one that's going to yield the best results.
So, we haven't solved for them. We're kicking these things around now, but, who best will this fit for, right? And what size dealership, what volumes? We talked about the members. I mean, some of the guys that we mentioned before is at a comparatively small dealership, right? It's lightweight, nimble for him to do himself, or his nephew is going to come and do the inspections of the car. But scaling that up into some of the big organizations, and we need to have those conversations, because now we're talking about meaningful volume of cars.
Sure.
And do they have the manpower at those dealerships to do the inspections themselves? And that's a conversation we want to have. Who in your community, if you think about like the vendors that are coming to your dealership, you've got the glass guy that comes. You've got the towel guy that comes. You've got the speedy guy that comes. You've got the inspector for Progressive because your body shop has Allstate or Progressive insurance out back. A lot of those people are very capable and knowledgeable car people that, if you think about the challenges you have right now, we talked this morning, we were talking about space limitations at some of the metropolitan stores up in Boston, where there literally is no place to place a car. You're kind of forced to have a lot sweep in place, take the cars to another location to be staged, to prepare for auction. We're going to be able to adapt to all of those things as well. So when we think about, you might perceive the challenge of saying, well, I want to sell stuff in it, but I got to rate the car myself. How the hell am I going to do that? I don't have any space in my thing. You do. You know how to do this, right?
You're doing it for all your retail cars. I think that's the... Yeah. I don't mean to steal this from you, but
no. That's it. But
it's fascinating to me, and I know I said this on another video that we did. But when I was a dealer and a used car dealer selling, 500-600 cars a year, it wasn't huge, but it wasn't tiny.
Right.
I viewed every car that we touched that came into our, that got logged in our dealer registry. Right. Every car is an opportunity, and there's this unfortunate dark cloud that hangs over wholesale cars as they're just like this bucket of problems. There's 6 cars in the back, there's 12 cars shoved over there. Make these problems go away. I mean, if there is $1,000 bounty on each of those cars, easily. I said $1,500 in another little video, but I believe it, and I've seen it. I mean, the difference a clean makes and an accurate representation. And hey, I mean, maybe you do invest a little bit in it. Maybe you put $500 in the car to go and unlock another $1,000 by bringing a better prepared car to market. Gosh, just tell me if the thing runs and shifts and goes down the road or not. Right.
And I think that's the color we're talking about. And when we open up the application and you see what this looks like, and I mentioned this to our friends up the other day about where we were talking about the guarantee section of the CR, and again, you could see him like there was a question there. But then when I said, well, when we give you the keys to a CR and you begin to write these things yourself, then it manifests itself like, okay, now I actually have the ability to add the color to this car. And that's the difference about, you can say that like the tires, are they guaranteed or not? Yes, they're guaranteed. And in your extra photos, you show the 4 dualers that you put on that Tahoe, right? And from Pete's Tire Barn, the slip that you paid, $1,500 to put those dualers on there, right? Where maybe you don't have that ability right now in the market. So,
I mean, the industry has gone for all the best intentions toward data and digitization of all these attributes of a vehicle, and it's still subjective.
Don't we already know that anyhow? I mean, right? We were talking about a Sonata before. A Sonata is a Sonata is a Sonata. Well, no, I know that's not the case, right? I mean, yeah, it's a 2022 Sonata, right? And they do about this, all right? But no two cars. That's another one. No two cars are like fingerprints, right? It's unique. Right. And if your car is unique, good or bad, it might be a D-level car. It could be a C-level car. And we haven't unlocked all of these things. You'll see these components in the CR, but it's not just, I think this is a nice car, Joe. I think you should take the car. No, and where we offer the seller really to explain why he derived at that opinion of the car, right? That helps the buyer make his decision. Yeah. So it's
and we've seen that all this works anyways. If you go on the retail sites, right? There is a explanation. There is a description of that actual vehicle, right? And the features that actual vehicle has and the condition that actual vehicle has, or there should be. Yeah. You look at Airbnb, right? Or VRBO. That's not data. That's somebody that actually sat there and wrote about, the views and the sunset and, what it's like to stay there. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Don't lie, but it's okay to tell an honest story about the asset that you're looking at.
That's something that we'll watch, and there probably is data that we can extrapolate from that. We're going to see patterns, and we're going to see. We talked, I think, before in another event. We talked about who the good players are, who the chameleons are, and who the guys are that really shouldn't be there. That's going to help us guide the community towards just a better, more transparent experience for why you're on there. You can log in. You're going to feel confident that while you're there, you're going to have a high success, whether you're buying or selling. Right, log back out, go on about your business, and run the dealership that you.
Yeah, and this really is a auction marketplace built by wholesale-minded car guys. So
yeah, so whether the cars get bought or sold, it's an ongoing conversation. This is the type of thing that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Day after day after day. Get in touch with us, reach out to us. Let's have this conversation. If you're a buyer or a seller, you want to blend both of them on DealerClub. Let's have that conversation and get you a key to the club.
Yeah, so DealerClub.com. It couldn't be easier. Go on there, fill out a simple lead gen form. We will be in touch with you. We'll get you on the email list, and more good information coming your way.
Follow us on YouTube and watch for our posts on LinkedIn, and get in touch with us, and we'll see you in the tap room soon, right? We'll see you in the club room real soon. We're getting there. Stay in touch.